All right, so if you're just joining us from the recording, we watched this documentary. We'll put a link somewhere. It was about the um, whistled language syllable grammar, and so I'm gonna give a little context on that. I guess calling it a language isn't exactly right. It's a register, which means it's basically Spanish, but they cut down the number of phonemes and like kind of changed it into whistles. And so if you understand Spanish and you have like a trained ear, you can like understand the whistles. Um, but it's a lot harder to learn how to do it. So yeah, it's spoken, I guess, only on the island of La Gomera in the Canary Islands. Um, but it is not the only such example of whistled registers. So I made like a little presentation about this. I will share screen. Okay. Okay. So um, as you may have noticed from this language, it was spoken on an island where there are like thick forests and it's pretty mountainous. Um, Historically, we've seen whistled registers like this show up in such places where you're like far away from somebody and need to communicate something. Like the example of the people being in the trees and working with the fruits there was like a kind of a good example of like the situation when this would arise. Um, and yeah, so mountainous. La Gomera has large gorges which needed to be communicated across. So this sort of developed in response to that isolation, and it shows up like all over the world. This kind of stuff. It's more common in tonal languages because I mean, kind of makes sense. If you have tones, it's easier to convey those into whistles. Um, so the language, the registers themselves are communicated through series of tones, intonation, and stress. Although the stress doesn't play as big of a factor. Um, so that's basically the broad. Um, Here's like a map of places where whistle languages exist. That you can see like they're on every um, major continent. Um, the one in Turkey is called a bird language um, because they thought it sounds like birds. And the ones in Mexico are really interesting. I'll touch on those a little bit. Um, so yeah, tone length stress. Um, it all the air in it is created inside your mouth and doesn't involve like lung air. Um, so because you can produce more sounds using consonants and stuff, it it is a little more restrictive than like normal spoken language, which is why you see it occur more frequently with tonal languages. Um, and yeah, the melodies carry more information in tonal languages. Um, so this is the inventory for Silva Gomero, which I lifted off Wikipedia. Um, as you can see, like they condense it a lot. You figure out most of the stuff from context. Um, so you have I and E in the IPA represented by the same thing, and then the other vowels represented by the other low frequency. Um, so it's not great for like if you want to read Tolstoy out loud, but it's good enough if you're trying to communicate to someone across a long distance some short message which they expect. Um, yeah, and a bunch of the consonants, as you can see, are combined into 4 different kinds of pitches. Some other whistled registers have a little more complex system, but this is a pretty good representation of what these look like. Um, as you might have wondered, it is easy to confuse things, but to trained speakers and listeners, uh, it makes more sense. These matrices show how frequently different sounds are confused with each other. The higher the number, the more those are registered as each other, and if it's bolded, it's the same thing. So, for example, the A and O phonemes are often confused because they are both low frequency, and it happens a lot with O and U for the same reason. However, most of the time, people get it. So, if you're interested in the cognitive explanation, um, this uses both the areas for language processing and music at the same time, which I thought was interesting. I'm not too qualified to comment on it further, but I saw that fact online and I thought it was interesting. So it can be really, really loud, as you saw in the documentary. Like the kids were too loudly near them, and so the maximum recorded distance that this has been heard at is 10 kilometers. The most it's like regularly used at is about 7, and normally it's just 1 to 2 kilometers away. And most of the research has been done in La Gomera, that place in Turkey I mentioned, because and like one other place, because those are the places where it's most frequently used. It's dying out a lot, which is why there was that effort by the Canary Islands to teach it in schools, which I thought was really cool. So I have some points about culture here. It was used in China for religious, spiritual purposes. In Mexico and West Africa, it was part of a patriarchal system that they used, where only men could use it. It was used in La Gomera during World War II by outlaws to communicate without the police finding out what they were up to. And same thing with Cubans under Spanish rule in the 19th century. And for my other point, in some Native American cultures, it's like a really important practice. And if you whistle in the wrong register, people will be mad at you. So that was like it for my little brief presentation. If anybody has any questions, I can try to answer them. I'm not like an expert on whistled languages, but I can do my best. Otherwise, I have 2 other short little things I can show you.
So they must have like changed that. Like they said that whistling language was spoken by natives. So obviously it wouldn't have been like a register of Spanish.
Well,
So
not of Spanish, but of their language.
yeah. So it was probably of their language, and then when the Spanish took over, they just used the same like translation of like between sounds and whistle sounds.
I
Or
think. Are you talking about the Cuban example?
no, like in the Canary Islands.
Oh, well, no, that only developed after the Spanish got there.
Wait,
I
what?
think it developed in what?
Pretty sure they said that the natives were spoken earlier. I don't know.
Oh.
Anyway.
Well, I mean, what they're speaking now at least is definitely Spanish. So if they did speak something before, they just co-opted it into Spanish. You'll see the examples from Turkey and one whistled register in Mexico. I'll go ahead and share those. If anybody has any other comments or questions. Okay, Ben, this is probably more copyrighted material, so probably best not to record.